Hello, my lovely humans. Welcome back to my channel, MFCA, and today we are doing a follow-up of continuing to do summaries and updates of the Courtney Clenney, aka Courtney Taylor case. So let's get into that. We got a lot to go through. So the first thing I want to get into, I was watching the Courtney Clenney bond hearing that was happening, and anytime I have any resources or whatever, I will link everything below, even if I don't specifically call them out. Everything will be linked below. So in that video, I was reading through some of the comments, and there was something I really want to put out into the universe, and that is arrest doesn't equal guilt. Just because somebody is arrested does not make them automatically guilty. How many stories do we see of minorities who get arrested for things that did not occur, for things they did not do? Karen Reed acquitted because she was found that she was supposed to have been charged with backing into her boyfriend, but he didn't show signs of being hit by a car. And sometimes people make arrests just because cops, they don't have the resources that they need to track down every little lead. They go to where most of the focus is going, because that's where they're going to put attention. They just don't have the manpower, etc., to chase after every little thing simultaneously. And they get pressured from the mayor, from the public, etc., to make an arrest. People want justice, and usually an arrest is enough to calm high public interest. So Courtney Clenney has been charged with murdering her boyfriend, Christian Abumseli, and he was a cryptocurrency salesman, allegedly, and she is an Instagram OnlyFans model. And that was something I wanted to also touch on, that I was reading the comments and people were saying things about her appearance. She has been in jail for 2.5 years now, or almost 3 years now, because she was arrested 2 weeks after the event, so mid-April 2022, and she has been in jail since. And people were saying, oh, the standard for model has gone down, whatever a model is, blah, 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 model. And I am just here to point out that when we are talking about law cases, we don't need to talk about how somebody is looking versus their actions. And on that note, as a person who wears makeup, you might be able to notice, people do look different with and without makeup on. And also, she can't take care of her skin. People were saying stuff about her acne. Yes, she's a human being, and those things happen. And she's been under a lot of stress. And when you get stressed out, you can break out because of those stress hormones. So yeah, she has some acne. One, she's a person. And two, she doesn't have access to her skincare, because you're not allowed to have moisturizers and face masks and salicylic acid acne treatments when you're in jail. Those things are considered contraband. You're very limited on what you're allowed to have access to in jail. It's really only what you can buy from their commissary catalogs and stuff, which does not often include moisturizer, sunscreen, or acne treatments. So yeah, for 2 years, she hasn't been able to wash her face with a face scrub or use moisturizer or do any of those skin attentive things that it needs to be its best. So she's not going to look fantastic, and everyone knows that you look different when you're dolled up versus when you first roll out of bed. And she doesn't have the ability to get, hair treatments or curl her hair or do really much of anything except maybe brush it and throw it into a ponytail. And that's if she could get a brush. Some facilities, for safety reasons, because they can be misused, don't even allow patients to have brushes and only allow them to have small combs and stuff. So there isn't much hair-wise she can actually do. So talking about her looks is kind of weird. And also, every model looks different when they're on versus when they're off. I'll link a Dove commercial below to show a model who's getting used on a billboard from years ago, and all the stuff that it takes before the final product gets released to the public, right? So arrest doesn't equal guilt. Her looks aren't really that important, and kind of rude. She's under a lot of stress and in a situation where she can't take care of her skin and hair the way she normally would. The next actual update to her story that I want to talk about is going to be where her parents had gotten arrested. Her parents were arrested by the prosecutors because they found text messages between one of the attorneys, Prieto, and the parents accessing some computers and devices. There was a shared computer in the apartment and a laptop, and Courtney had given them a PIN number after other password attempts didn't work. And the father had texted something along the lines of, "Oh, heck yeah, that worked. That got us in." The defense was saying, yeah, they needed to get into those things to go over it, and whatever they would find would be sent over. But prosecutors say that her parents had no business getting into that, and that the reason that the defense attorneys and the parents were trying to get into the computer was so that they could delete evidence, delete other videos that Christian may have taken, photos, etc., and that there was possible evidence tampering taking place. However, a judge had ruled on that, saying that because Frank Pietro, sorry, I keep mispronouncing his name. I will put it here. He is also their attorney, and so all of their communications, regardless of what they were, are attorney-client privilege. When you have an attorney and you and your attorney, the attorney team or whatever, are talking with people, that is private information, privileged information that gets excluded from court evidence. There is also spousal privilege. So her parents, her mom and dad, do not have to testify against each other because there is protected privilege there. Now, there is no parent-child protection, in case there's, something bad going on between the parents and the kid. They don't want that protected. And if you're wondering about if somebody gets a divorce, anything that was said pre-divorce, including like separations before the filings were official, signed, sealed, and dated, that is covered by the privilege. Anything post-divorce is not, because they are no longer your spouse. So the judge ruled that that was attorney-client privilege and that could not be used, and the parents were released. No further convictions or charges were made. Those charges were dropped. There was also a ruling by Judge Cruz that about the recordings. I had mentioned in the last video about her that Christian had videos of Courtney losing her mind, being completely off the handle, and he had several of them. And the defense attorney said that wasn't right for those to be brought in because that one, Clenney has a right to privacy. When you're in your home, you have a certain expected level of privacy expectations in it. And when there is an expectation of privacy, recordings of you in that setting are often not permissible. She didn't consent to being recorded because he was recording her without her knowing. And we had talked about how he could behave himself when he's on camera. Everybody behaves a little differently on camera than they do off camera. Like, this is just an example. I'm not going to scratch my bum on camera while you are all watching, or if it is, I'm going to delete that out if I stand up and I see myself having a little itch back there. No. Now, do people scratch their bottoms? Yes, but we don't do that on camera. That's not the image. That's not a part of what's important. And for him, it's a part of an image too. He's going to act differently than he was before he started recording, which is what the defense had argued in the first place. And the judge agreed to an extent. Several of the videos were considered admissible that had been brought forth by the prosecutors, but there were some that were also rejected. There was one big one that had been rejected because during the recording, where the expectation of privacy was, according to the judge, was how loud the couple was in the thing. They're like, if your sound waves, if you are shouting and screaming to the point where your walls where your voice is going out to the walls and your neighbors and people can hear you. And the judge was using complaints that the apartment complex had against Courtney and Christian. Those were some of the things. It was like, if there were noise complaints, that expectation of privacy is gone. If you are shouting and screaming where other people outside your apartment can hear and can hear you loud enough that they're making a complaint to the building about it, you no longer have an expectation of privacy. So those videos were brought in, and any videos where she was shouting. There were a couple times where the judge had said that she had to turn her computer volume down because of how loud shouting was in the video. That's not an expectation of privacy. Anything that was just arguing in a normal voice, in a normal tone, and a casual volume, where she didn't, if she had to turn her volume up, there were not noise complaints associated with that incident. Those were going to be excluded. So those are the major updates as far as that. And Courtney was, of course, denied bond because she had been arrested in Hawaii 2 weeks after the stabbing took place, and she has family in Texas. That's where her parents had been arrested when they first were, and she had previously lived in California. So the judge and the prosecutors had said that she was a very high flight risk. She had other places and connections where she could go if she was left out on bond. And the prosecutors also had mentioned that they think she's dangerous. They're arguing that this was a malicious, intentional murder, a murder of passion, spur of the moment. An argument went too far, and that Courtney's aggressive behavior just took it to a level, and then she was like, oh. Whereas the defense attorneys are saying, no, this was not an intentional, like, I'm gonna get you, stab you. It was as she was being attacked, and she was using that to defend herself. They're not saying that she didn't stab him. They're saying she stabbed out of self-defense because he was choking her. She couldn't breathe. He was slamming her around. And there are videos of and pictures of her having bruises, and we're going to get into that, there's a lot of things, and I had kind of put the skew of leaning towards her having done it maliciously in the other video. So let's talk about the other side of that, where she absolutely was a self-defense victim in this. From the top of their relationship, this relationship was never wholly sweet and good to begin with. It seemed like there was a lot of toxicity. And the third thing that I want to touch on is there is no such thing as a perfect victim. Okay, because of, books, movies, and television and stuff, we have this idea that in a toxic relationship, there's one bad person who is all bad and the victim is all good. No, we're people. We have a little bit of good, we have a little bit of bad between all of us. And the same is going to be true of Courtney and Christian. And we have to remember, just like the defense said, that he would do stuff to her. He would rile her, taunt her, bother her, gaslight her, do stuff to her. And then when she couldn't take it anymore, then he starts recording her. And now that was happening again. He was attacking her. He was doing stuff to her. And when she stood up for herself, now here we are. And I have firsthand experience, not to this level, but a similar thing where when I was bullied in school, and anyone who has ever been the victim of bullying has had this experience. I can say that very assuredly, that bullies, they kind of look around. They're manipulators too. They look around, they make sure that nobody's doing anything. They come up and do things to you, say things to you. And when I retaliated, like I'm standing up for myself, they start doing things to me. I have gotten detention and gotten yelled at and sent to the office for defending myself against a bully, because they don't see that part. What they saw, just like when law enforcement went there, they didn't see him with his hand around her neck, slamming her around the apartment. All they saw was him on the ground with a bloody knife on the floor. And her, like, not being stabbed covered him in his blood. And what the teachers or whoever at school saw when I was getting bullied, they just see me pushing the other person back. They see me just waving my hands around. They see see me just going crazy. Like, will you leave me alone? That's what they see. And so they have to act on what they actually witnessed, right? And that's not the whole situation. And other things that happen is when you have other people to back the bullies up, when they have their friends around who are like, oh no, we didn't do that. Like, we just walked by and, FCA lost her mind. That exact same thing could have happened to Courtney. And that is something that manipulators and abusers do. They manipulate the situation. They can be very charming and narcissistic, have narcissistic tendencies, where they have a group of people around them who go, oh, Christian would never do that. He would never do that. He's this charming, fun-loving guy. There was a video of him the day of the stabbing, of him kind of having a little boogie on a live stream or a little video. Okay, but that doesn't make him not bad. Like, that doesn't make him all good. Bullies, manipulators, abusers do not act in front of everyone. They keep their actions behind closed doors. They don't want their victim to have a support system. So they absolutely act as privately, and they try to keep their image as well as possible. And Christian absolutely could have been that person. And we heard his family saying his accolades, what a great guy he was, what an upstanding citizen he was, that he was a star football player. And we all know that football players never do bad things and never have domestic violence incidents in their life. And that high school football players and college football players never do aggressive things at all. Because again, who he presents to friends, family, and the public is very different than how he could have acted towards her. And the other option is that both of them are just two abusers found each other. And those kind of relationships, the reason why they end up kind of staying together and this on-off thing happens is because they both like the high part of passion. They get an adrenaline rush. They get that dopamine shot from the high intensity levels when they're, wow, wow, wow. That's really intense and is really good because that level is like at a 15. But their fights are also getting to that level. Their fallouts are also that high intensity negative passion. And so that very well could have been it. And there was a witness the day before. The cops had been called. Courtney had said that she wasn't always a victim, but she was a victim this time, that she was breaking up with him, going to kick him out. And the neighbor, they were on one of those fancy high-rise apartments where you can see right into each other's things when your blinds are open. And he said that he saw Christian have Courtney pinned against a wall and that he was doing his arms like this, that Christian was moving his arms like that. He couldn't tell if he was punching her or just slapping her. Or slapping her. But he was doing this. He was in some form wailing on Courtney. And she had ducked and was starting to run away from him. And when Christian turned to go after her, he saw the neighbor across the street and then pulled the blinds down. And so that happened. There was a report on that. The cops were called, everything else. And she said that she wanted a restraining order against him. And let us keep in mind that if you watch the little kind of Dateline interview, trying to think of what it is, documentary type thing, I will link that below. You will see that her parents say that she had been assaulted when she was younger, and that she didn't have a very high self-worth, and that Christian would hold that over her, that no one else will love you. I'm the only one who could put up with your... And that is another manipulation way that abusers have. They try to keep their partner isolated so that they don't have a support system. They want to make them feel unlovable so that they don't leave them. And Christian had a monetary motivation to keep Courtney as his victim, if that indeed was the case. And that had been also mentioned in the interview documentary thing, is that he didn't make the money. The lease was in Courtney's name, not his. The Ferraris that he drove, those were from Courtney, not from him. All of his luxury and designer clothing and stuff, those were all paid by Courtney. His luxury bills were paid by Courtney. Courtney was the one bringing in all the bucks from OnlyFans and Instagram. Now, what capacity? He had taken some photos and videos of her. They made some TikToks together doing dances and stuff. But I don't know if there was a contracted, he's a photographer, he would take this many photos of her for Instagram, or if it was just a hey babe, can you take my photo for Instagram? Yeah, sure. There hasn't been a lot of revelation or information about what that possible partnership was like. And we see that with a lot of YouTubers where they have a partner who is the person behind the camera. But we don't know what level of business there was between them. And so Christian doesn't want to lose his luxury lifestyle. It had been mentioned in the documentary that once you have a taste of that good life, it's hard to go back. And he's a cryptocurrency salesman, but there wasn't any income being generated from that. So what was he doing? Where was he doing that? What sales had he made? Bank transactions? Not a lot of that has come out either. It doesn't seem like there was a lot of it going on. He found Courtney. He found his Instagram cash cow. And when she was going to like cut the udder off, sorry, maybe not the best analogy, but when she was going to cut the cash flow off, he wasn't going to deal with that. So he starts being aggressive. He gets mad. She wants a restraining order against him. She's kicking him out of their place again. And he's getting mad. And so he starts choking her, trying to get her to agree to let him stay. We're getting back together. And she's a bit of a spitfire too. She's not a perfect victim, as we discussed before. So when he slams her down, finally lets her get up, and then like they're arguing, screaming at each other, and then he comes back at her, she grabs the knife and throws it. And even if it was that she like turned around, he was there and she got him, that still could be an act of self-defense. So just gonna have to wait and see what the evidence is. There is a lot of stuff showing that both of them were toxic to each other. There were a bunch of witnesses and statements saying that they were both aggressive towards each other. And even though we've seen a lot of video clips and stuff of her being the aggressor, that doesn't mean that he never was, or that he would never go too far with her either. Even in the elevator video, we see him doing stuff to her. She looks like she's trying to leave in the elevator. He follows her in, and then smacking starts between the two of them. And she had bruises, and her OnlyFans, her Instagram and OnlyFans fans had said that she had bruises on her multiple times, and the prosecutors tried to say that that was what they were using against her self-defense claim, that she had did some dance videos prior to the stabbing and she already had bruises on them, so they didn't come from Christian. Okay, he could have been hurting her before, and she has a plethora of bruises in places. There are some on the back of her arm. Getting a bruise on the front of your arm, on the top, that happens just in day-to-day life. Getting bruises under your arm, on the inside of your arm, on your side, on not the front part of your thighs, but on the side or the inside of your thighs, those are all very much indicators of something else going on. So, yeah, there's a lot of evidence. This could be crazy. Are these just two toxic people who a fight went really badly and now this? Or is Or is Courtney truly a killer model? We'll have to wait to find out in the trial. All right, let me know what you all think in the comment section below, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, my humans.